Welcome back, everyone, to UNinvested, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know, even if you feel like you know nothing. As always, my name is Crockett Calloway.
I'm Silas Seth.
And in today's episode, we are very lucky and deeply excited to talk to Jacob Nathan, the co-founder and CEO of Epoch Biodesign. Now, Sahil, all too often we hear about the archetypal narrative of the student founder, right? The young high school or college dropout turned hustler who's building the next billion-dollar unicorn. But it's also easy to forget that those people aren't just myths. They actually exist.
Jacob Nathan is one of those people, founding Epoch Biodesign at just 18 years old and sipping what most consider the most conventional life path, college. Today, at just 22 years old, Jacob has raised over $16 million for his company with investors like Chris Sacca. He's on a mission to transform the future of sustainable plastic and circular energy.
Welcome to the show, Jacob. Great to be here.
So, Jacob, for our first question, we really want to talk about how you kind of started Epoch Biogen. Like, where did this fascination for biology, creating enzymes? I know, starting at a young age, not many people are interested in those paths. What really kind of got you going towards it?
It's a bit of a long, slightly circuitous journey. I got my kind of start maybe in sustainability at quite a young age. I watched a lot of David Attenborough growing up, spent a lot of time in nature, kind of built up through love and appreciation for the world around us. Probably had my epiphany moment, maybe age 13, 14. I think we all do at some point. Mine was quite early, where I realized, okay, the world is on fire and we should probably do more to try and put that fire out. And so that turned into this feeling of, okay, what can I do to try and put us onto a slightly different path? Going through school, that meant doing things like leading the Sustainability Council. I led a bunch of classmates to skip class and protest outside the Houses of Parliament for climate action back when school strikes were happening. Quickly became a little bit disenfranchised with kind of some of the activism that was going on. And I thought maybe there was a better, more scalable way to address our problem of kind of environmental destruction and climate change, maybe through kind of the lens of building a business and sort of scaling something different. So that kind of realization coincided with an opportunity I had during my final year of school, during my senior year, where I was given the chance to take a research class, kind of like an independent study. I'd done my biology, done my chemistry. That was kind of what I was into in high school, and had the chance to kind of take that one step further and kind of build a project that I could do myself. And so, given my kind of background in sustainability, and then the fact that I'd done a few beach cleanups in my summers, I knew I wanted to do something in sustainability, and then kind of more specifically in plastics. Gave a lot of thought as to why we have this problem of plastic waste, right? Like why we can't deal with all the stuff we're generating. And realized there are kind of two sides to this equation. So one is we just make way too much of the stuff, but the other is actually we don't know what to do with it once we're done using it. And we could stop making plastics tomorrow, but there are still 10 billion tons of this material that are just kind of sitting around taking up space. So we should probably find something to do with it. So I thought it would be good if you could take all this waste plastic and you could turn it into chemicals that had industrial uses, offtake markets, but really most importantly, value, right? That way you could solve one of the fundamental problems with recycling, which is that it's not really profitable to do it. So kind of unsurprisingly, nobody wants to do it, right? Also excitingly, if you're making new chemicals and materials from waste plastic, it means you're not making those chemicals and materials from newly extracted fossil carbon, right? So circular economy, not that kind of new of a realization, but really kind of a powerful pathway to kind of reimagining the way that we're manufacturing things. So I knew from my biology background in school that an enzyme, a little biological machine, was the most efficient way to do a chemical reaction, right? Hence why we exist today. We are powered by enzymes. Life around us is powered by enzymes. And so that was my research project to try and find a plastic-eating enzyme. I kind of got started by digging into the literature, kind of what scientists had done before, had my own thoughts, went out into nature, took some samples, brought them back to the lab, and got some really early and interesting results where I was able to find these microbes that were breaking down plastic waste in order to kind of grow and replicate. It was at that moment when I remembered, okay, I don't have my PhD. Let me find someone a lot smarter than me to help me take that forward. So I went online and I tried to find the best person in the country to do that. That turned out to be somebody called Douglas Kelp, who's kind of he's a professor in the UK and this world leader in a field called systems and synthetic biology, right? So understanding how all the different components of biology work together to create a living organism but then using a method of something called synthetic biology to design and optimize those components in order to build something different.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like, just kind of reaching out to this stranger, Doug? Like, you're writing just a random email to him. In your words, he's world renowned. He's done a lot. Like, why is he responding to you? What did that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, he was actually, it's a bit of a crazy story, but my great uncle is a computer scientist. And back in the 90s, he developed kind of an early machine learning algorithm, which kind of pales in comparison to what we interact with today, but was kind of pretty cutting edge at the time. And Doug, my co-founder, was always really interested in how you could use machine intelligence to kind of begin to decrypt and better understand the complexities of biology and chemistry, and like, you know, how can we find like different paradigms for understanding these complex systems. And so Doug found a piece of work that my great uncle had been working on, and they worked together. They sort of did a little bit of work, and then they kind of weren't working together so closely, but stayed in touch over the following years. And when I was telling my great uncle about the work I was doing at school and potentially some interesting results, he goes, "Oh, you should reach out to Doug. Here's his email." So I reached out and I said, "Look, I'm the great nephew of Mike, and here's what I'm working on, and I'd really just appreciate your thoughts, right? Like, can you suggest some things that I should do differently, or maybe what kind of the next steps look like? Do you know anyone I can get in touch with?" And I remember writing quite a long email, maybe like 11 p.m. on like a Monday night or something. And about 3 minutes later, I got a response from Doug, basically saying like, "This is incredibly exciting. I'd love to help you, scientifically, and if you like me commercially as well. Don't tell anyone about this. This is very, very cool." And you can imagine, like, senior year of high school, senioritis kicking in, and I was just like struggling to get through some physics homework, and I went to bed sort of wide awake, kind of amped, really excited about the fact that someone very legitimate had taken an interest in what I was doing, like really, really validating. And I remember sort of sitting at 8 a.m. in English the next day, reading Shakespeare, and just thinking, yeah, no, I don't want to be doing this. I want to go figure out how biology works.
What you discovered, is it considered very novel? Or because you said he's very interested, has he never seen anything like this before? Or was this something he was very familiar with and you maybe found like a new tweak to it?
So I had discovered a microbe in nature that was producing an enzyme that was breaking down plastic. And I didn't know what microbe it was. I didn't know what enzyme it was. But we could see that it was feeding on plastic because it's only carbon source. And so it kind of must have been breaking it down, right? And this is, since then, a lot of different things have been discovered in nature. But at the time, it was pretty interesting, right? That nature had developed a means to break down a material that really hasn't been around for that long. And so, Doug was quite excited by the possibility of, okay, well, maybe this enzyme or some optimized version of that enzyme could then work at scale. And that would be sort of a fundamentally new way to break down all the different types of plastics that today sort of are not recyclable. Since then, we've progressed the underlying technology pretty dramatically. And we now work on different classes of enzymes for different types of materials, using fundamentally different techniques. But I think at the time it was that early sort of, wow, okay, this is a starting point for us to optimize from.
And so at this point, you're clearly realizing Shakespeare is not what you want to do. You're more passionate in this idea. Maybe you're realizing college and university isn't what you want to do. Tell me about that next step, the step from kind of, here's the ideation phase. Maybe let's move to the business phase.
When I met up with Doug, we decided to kind of start this company together. We applied for a bit of government funding, and that was actually matched by some investment from a venture capital fund here in the UK. Funnily enough, we didn't realize that at the time. So we got this government grant, and we got a call from a VC firm one day being like, "Hey, can we look at your data room?" And we're like, "Who are you? I don't know what's going on." And we did actually end up taking that money, and they were incredibly helpful to us, kind of figuring out the very earliest stages of trying to build a company, and even think about putting together a pitch deck. Right, that was something fundamentally new. So we got that government money. I spent the summer after my senior year working in Doug's lab at the university, and kind of began to convince myself that this was really interesting and sort of something I wanted to explore further. I had a place at university. It was my top choice and I really wanted to go. And I went to a school that was very focused on university, right? Like that's your measure of success, and that's kind of what you work for years and years. And so for me, there was at the time quite a big mental barrier to break through to actually say, okay, I'm not going to do this thing, which in hindsight feels a little bit crazy. But anyways, I took a first gap year to kind of see how things went, and I said to myself, okay, if I can raise some money, then I'll see where I'm at. So things were going really well. And then we had a pandemic in the middle of that. So I kind of said, okay, let me take a second gap year because I don't know what effect this is going to have. Within a few months of taking that second gap year, I had closed our kind of first funding round, which is about $3.5 million. And I said to myself, okay, well, look, this gives me a couple of years to see where this goes. Like if at the end of it, I have nothing to show for myself, well, at least, hey, I've got a great experience and network and some cool stories. And if it goes further, then it goes further. And so university just became less and less of a point of interest. And I realized that experiential learning could be far more catalytic, albeit slightly more intense and sort of unstructured.
So you said you kind of went into that gap year, like I want to raise money, like right off the bat, weren't considering bootstrapping. I don't know too much about the environmental biology industry, but I assume it's a pretty expensive one. So how were you really able to just go into that with all the chemistry, biology experience, and then just go into the venture industry, raise money from investors, create a pitch deck? Was it all new again? Kind of like how you reached out to Doug, it was all cold emails, a bunch on Monday at 11 p.m.?
For a couple of our investors, yeah, I just send them a cold email. And there's one example, right? We reached out to a fund in the UK who's like sort of one of the UK's most renowned deep tech funds. And the founder, he started a company called ARM, which is a massive kind of chip designer and a hugely valuable company. And somebody shared his email with me that I'd met at an event and, said, okay, he's pretty open to cold emails. So I sent him an email, told him what we were building, got a response 10 minutes later. He said, send me a business plan. I sent him a business plan. And then he put me in touch with another partner at the firm to kind of take the conversation forward. But really, this was all fundamentally new and unknown. I look back at some of my earliest pitch decks and I just cringe at the fact that I ever shared that with someone. I mean, they're very, very bad. And so it was very much a conversation of, when I met people, right, I would ask for advice. I would say, look, this is what we're trying to build. What do you think? How do you think we could improve this? And I feel like when you ask for advice, you get money. And when you ask for money, you get advice, especially at the earliest stages. And, people love to be talked to. People love to be asked for advice. And I think once you learn that about people, then you can position yourself quite well. I would say as well, like one of our biggest challenges, right, was that, Sahil, it's not cheap to do this kind of work, right? Like we can't sit in a basement drinking Monster Energy, just coding through the night, right? Like we need to hire PhDs and, there's equipment in our lab that, a single piece of equipment is hundreds of thousands of pounds and, this stuff costs a lot of money to do. And so we had to convince investors that, fundamentally this was worthwhile. And a lot of that came down to the storytelling aspect. And it took me a few months to get the story right. And I was getting a lot of no's from investors and it's sort of dial in and sort of, why a no? What would change this for you? And we started sort of talking more about the narrative of the business. And what we found was when we focused less on the science and we focused more on the, look, like this is the outcome, this is the business case, this is the story of what the world looks like if we succeed, that started to resonate a lot more. And we said, okay, like, that's where we're going. And you're going to take a bet that myself and my very, very experienced scientific co-founder are going to be able to pull together the team in order to make this a reality. And frankly, a lot of early stage investing is nothing more than a bet on the founders. The business you think you're going to build is so fundamentally different from the business that you actually end up building that the investment is based on, do we think these people are going to be able to kind of pull it off?
I'm actually curious on that story and kind of how that vision has evolved now. I think it's easy enough for you to tell Sahil and I, you're kind of creating the future of circular energy and plastic renewal because that sounds amazing and interesting to me. But obviously to an investor, as you'd mentioned, it's often in the more concrete, where's the returns and where's the objective value that I can reap from this? And so what's the vision now, and kind of how's that vision developed for Epoch in terms of what new resources it can create? Can it make things cheaper? Can it make energy cheaper? What does that vision look like?
So, I mean, when we first started, this was a science project, right? And I was pitching it as a science project. And funnily enough, it turns out that science projects aren't actually venture backable. And I learned that pretty quickly. So we evolved, and as the technology evolved and we spoke to customers and we built our team and we just kind of synthesized new ideas, what we realized is that biology is this amazingly powerful tool, right? That is programmable, that is designable, that is eventually going to be able to, things the McKinsey report that's pretty infamous at this point that suggests it'll create $4 trillion in value in the next couple of decades. It will produce 60% of the physical inputs to our economy. I mean, these are all like big numbers that, tend to create interesting questions when it comes to financial return. So the way we see it is that biology is the tool to unlock value in waste that simply wasn't there before, right? We throw billions of tons of plastic into our environments, into ocean landfill. We burn it in incineration facilities. Like, it's just lost, right? You spend all of that energy and effort taking stuff out of the ground, refining it, using it in our products, and you just waste it at the end of life. And that, it's not even an environmental question. Like, that's just bad business, right? So the question is, how can we use biology as a very kind of cheap enabling capability to bring out value from this material? And that's exactly what we do. So when we think about creating chemicals from plastic waste, chemicals that then get remanufactured into things like paints and coatings, fertilizers, cleaning products, or even sort of brand new plastics, right? It's not a question of sustainability. Yes, the products that we make are fundamentally better for the planet. They have a lower CO2 equivalent compared to making them from virgin material. They divert material from landfill and incineration, lower water usage, a lot of kind of non-greenhouse gas toxins associated with producing a lot of these materials. We cut all of that out. But it also turns out that plastic waste is very cheap. Biology is very efficient. And this is actually just a cheaper way to produce the materials and chemicals that we need to make the world go around. So I think increasingly there's a realization, and I believe it's something like, take this with a pinch of salt because the number has been shifting quite a lot. But, pre-pandemic, it was a low single-digit percentage of VC dollars that were invested in green technologies and climate. Now, last stat I saw was 14%. I have heard since then it's gone above 20%. So investors are increasingly realizing that this is the first time, potentially ever, since the first industrial revolution, that we have had a chance to reimagine the way that we make everything. And it turns out that that's actually a really big economic opportunity. So some of the biggest companies that are going to be built in the next 100 years, frankly, are in climate or in energy or in resource reuse, because actually the technologies they're building, yes, they're better for the planet, but they're just going to put the incumbents out of business. And that's really the story that we tell. That is the vision for us, that we're going to be making everything with biology. We're going to be reusing all of our waste, but actually it's just going to be cheaper. It's going to be a better product. And we don't have to compromise on that, right? This question of sustainability and profitability.
Yeah, so I completely understand your pitch. I can see your pitch to VCs. I can see the value you can extract from this, the monetization. But it's one thing to pitch to a normal investor, but obviously, as we were doing research, we noticed how you have a billionaire, Chris Sacca, backing you. And how do you really gather the confidence to pitch this idea to someone of that stature, that industry experience? And what type of confidence does it give you knowing that he's backing you fully now?
So admittedly, I never actually got to pitch to Chris. I pitched to another partner in the firm, Clay, who's frankly highly capable and one of the smartest people I've met in this kind of journey. At the time, I got introduced to them and I didn't realize that it was Chris's fund. I'll be really honest. And so I think probably going in for the first time, I was just having back-to-back investor meetings. Someone made this introduction. I was like, okay, great. I'll take it and see where it goes. And I realized afterwards who I'd spoken to, and I was like, okay, I'm glad that went all right. I think I just went through a process of saying my pitch so many times that it just became second nature to me. It's sort of whoever I was speaking to, I would sort of use the same level of confidence. And I think by getting feedback, by hearing that it's a good pitch, by being it, I need my grandma to be able to understand what I'm doing. Then I know that I'm pitching correctly. And if you're able to communicate fundamentally difficult science and technology and complex markets to people and they can understand it, I think that buys you a lot of credibility. And for me, at least, I found that, okay, well, if people are understanding this, then I do have confidence in what I'm saying. And, I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to doing this type of thing, right? Like at a certain level, like I have no right to be doing what I'm doing. But I've increasingly found that, I've made mistakes. I've learned from those mistakes. And that goes in sort of pitching, but also kind of running and managing my business. But increasingly, I'm learning from those. I'm making decisions and the payoff is there. And I think that's really gratifying to see that I'm kind of evolving. And that being said, it's I think to bring ego to this role can be really self-destructive. I think we've seen plenty of stories of founders who have kind of let that get the better of them, and investors and employees who have suffered as a result, customers as well, and that's never a good thing. So in many ways, I have a pretty blank slate, right? Like I don't have a professional experience or journey before this, and whilst that leaves me with a lot of that's left me with a lot of learning to do, and I think it can be pretty advantageous when it comes to actually learning the correct things and doing it in a proper way.
I think it's interesting you bring up the ego aspect that a lot of, plagues a lot of founders, especially when it comes to something like environmental sustainability, which should be, I imagine, one of the most selfless fields that you can work in when it relates to the environment, and how it's often destructive to bring that ego in. Something that also interests me there is that destructive component and kind of the threats that might be against Epoch right now. There's often threats both on the innovative level, where new challengers coming up and maybe trying to do what Epoch is trying to do, but also threats from tradition and the norm, things like big recycling or big industry. Are there any like traditional threats that you see that is posing kind of pushback or a challenge to Epoch and the work that you're doing?
Funnily enough, like we sit in a field with unstoppable tailwinds. We have regulatory demand or pressure rather. We have consumer demand. We have the fact that actually raw materials can be incredibly expensive, and we've seen a number of supply chain shocks in the last couple of years, and suddenly people are realizing, okay, centralizing all of my production in 2 facilities in sort of potentially geopolitically difficult regions is probably not the best thing. And so all of that has come together to say that, okay, we need sustainable solutions because we're going to get taxed. We need sustainable solutions because our customers demand it. We need sustainable solutions because decentralization is inherently more sustainable, and we can achieve supply chain security whilst optimizing for our sustainability and carbon goals. In terms of resistance that we found, I mean, we tend to position ourselves a lot more as an enabler than a threat. And I think that's kind of a key distinction in what we're doing. We work collaboratively with large multinational chemical companies, brands that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And the feedback we hear is that, look, this is a key problem for us to solve. We know we can't do it alone. And so we want to work with others. Now, I think that's a mindset shift that has happened in the last couple of years, frankly. We're now competing for budgets that didn't exist 5 years ago. And that's a pretty fundamental change in the mindset of a customer. Now, if we think about it at an even higher level, like, yeah, of course, someone's going to lose out. The landfills and the incinerators. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay too. Well, Jacob, I really want to thank you for coming on. I have one more question to ask you. I think it's one that's going to be pretty fascinating from your side. Is there anything that's really grounded you, or a routine that you've maintained throughout this whole crazy entrepreneurial process, whether that be a morning Wordle, a meal, maybe you do yoga? Like most of our guests are always just like, I do yoga every day, but I'd like to hear if there's anything that's really kept you grounded through this whole process.
I should probably answer with yoga. That would be a lie. I think my body would thank me if I did that. But, we do the best we can. Honestly, I'm a bit of a creature of habit. I eat the same thing every single day. I have a routine. I go to the gym. I find that these things are pretty kind of grounding. I will say I found quite a lot of, look, this job is incredibly draining at times, but also incredibly rewarding at times, and that can be a bit of a roller coaster. I think any founder can attest to that. And I found that long bike rides out into the country can be incredibly sort of grounding and settling. I don't check my phone. I put it on Do Not Disturb. I've got kind of 3-4 hours of kind of uninterrupted time where I'm not answering emails, and that can be a good opportunity to sort of calm the mind, clear it out from the week, and just kind of think about things with a slightly fresher fresher pair of eyes.
I think that for a cause as noble as what Epoch is doing, you deserve those long bike rides into the country. You know, you you deserve that time during the roller coaster to kind of de-stress a little bit. But with that being said, Jacob, we've loved hearing everything about Epoch's mission and your journey from being an entrepreneur to fundraising to the future of Epoch, both on your end, you know, as a personal founder, but also as a company as a whole. But as always, I'm Crockett Calloway.
I'm Sahil Seth.
And this has been Uninvested.
Thank you.
This is a personal video. Any views or opinions represented in this video are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations we may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity.
The views expressed are for entertainment purposes only and not to be misinterpreted as actionable investment advice.